A privileged meeting of partners is taking shape as India and Russia's top bilateral platform for building economic ties is meeting in Moscow this Tuesday. And there's plenty to touch base on for the two nations after Donald Trump's reign of tariff terror. It was shot down by the U.S. Supreme Court. But the U.S. president, he has issued a warning.
Any country that wants to play games with the ridiculous Supreme Court decision, especially those that have ripped off the USA for years, and even decades, will be met with a much higher tariff, and worse, than that which they just recently agreed to. Buyer beware. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
And joining us here in the studio is RT India correspondent Rujuta Tete. Rujuta, Trump is still issuing tariff threats, even after the Supreme Court has given its judgment. Now, what exactly is the warning this time?
So right now, Trump's speech is not directed to any specific country as of yet, but we need to understand the overall context that is here. Trump's tariffs are targeted to Russian oil buyers, but the closest allies are very divided over it. For example, Hungary has now blocked the move by the EU to sanction Moscow and to stop the flow of Russian oil supplies. And they're also saying that EU loan to Ukraine will also remain blocked until the Russian oil imports and the shipments resume. So this is one kind of reaction that is coming in. And also the oil shipments to Hungary and Slovakia have been interrupted since 27th Jan. That's also something that we need to note here. Let's take a look at what Hungarian Foreign Minister has to say about this.
It is a sovereign right of ours to decide where we are buying the energy sources from and what kind of energy sources we buy. This is our national sovereign right. And we are not ready to buy more expensive energy sources than the current ones, and we are not ready to buy from less reliable sources than the current one. This is our sovereignty issue.
Now, India, which was amongst the biggest purchaser of Russian oil, has also been maintaining that they are going to keep their national interest as their priority. And they also maintain that all of the oil purchases that they are making depends directly on the demand that the country has, the energy demands that the country has. So the question here is, does the US Supreme Court verdict change anything, or will it allow Delhi to bargain on this particular aspect with the US? That is something that we need to see what will happen next. And here we also need to know that India and the US trade talks has also been kept on hold right now. An Indian delegation was supposed to visit Washington to have the trade talks move ahead, but right now that is entirely on hold. Although meanwhile, India is trying to maintain and make new bilateral trade relations with other countries. For example, PM Modi is going to visit Israel the coming week. Then there's the Canadian Prime Minister who is going to be in India, and they are also going to talk about trade between the two countries. So what's more interesting here is that the India-Russia Economic Commission is also going to discuss the next step for discussing the bilateral trade relations between the two countries. And that is going to happen today. So the India-US joint statement, which came in on 6th Feb, that is very recently, it actually said that Delhi has agreed to reduce the dependence on Russian oil. However, the Supreme Court ruling also adds a new twist to this entire issue. Yeah. And the question here is, what happens now when Russia's Indian oil purchases, is it going to reduce or increase or stay the same? Because Indian refiners might just stick with this purchase because it's more cheaper and it's competitive. Now, there's also a report by a Finnish think tank, which is the Center for Research on Energy and Clean Air, which has stated that while Russian oil imports have dropped overall last year, although the volume did not go down. Now, that is something important to note here. The volume of Russian crude oil has remained actually 6% above from the entirety of the export that has happened 4 years ago, and that is as per this Finnish think tank report. And that is also because Russia has continued to provide oil at much more competitive prices and cheaper prices to India and other countries. So now that in the US Senate, there are also 22 Democrats who have introduced a bill to force refunds on these Trump's illegal tariffs.
Yeah.
So with all this development that is happening around this, the US pressure on oil purchases from Russia is slightly on a slippery ground right now. So we'll have to see how this goes ahead.
All right. As always, Rujita Thete, thank you very much for getting us all those details.
Thank you.
And I'm now joined by Mr. Ajay Srivastav. He is the former Director General of Foreign Trade in India, responsible for policy implementation. Mr. Srivastav, thank you very much for speaking with RT India. You know, many of the experts, they believe that with the US Supreme Court verdict, India, it has no more threats over Russian oil. And if that is the case, how does that change our trade relationship with the US?
I think we will need few weeks to understand the full equation. You are right, technically, that US imposed reciprocal tariffs on India at the rate of 25% for buying Russian oil. Those reciprocal tariffs are gone now after Supreme Court judgment. And so US cannot impose reciprocal tariffs again, and India is free. But I think Mr. Trump has many things in his mind. He's talking about these, and these things will become clearer in the next 1 or 2 weeks. We can talk about these things later, I think after some time, in a clear way.
Mr. Srivastav, how much of India's current energy security still depends on discounted Russian crude? If you can help make us understand that.
For example, last year we bought about $50 billion worth of Russian crude. It was more than a third of India's crude requirements. So Russia was our top supplier and the most important oil supplier to India.
Sir, if India reduces Russian oil purchases, especially under US pressure, what does it lose financially, according to you?
Till 2 years back, or even 1.5 years back, we could see the discounts from Russian oil very clearly. But now I think with the oil prices falling down, the discounts are not visible so clearly. And that was one point. And now after US sanctions against two largest Russian oil firms, Rosneft and Lukoil, things have become murkier now. And I think we need some time, about 3-4 weeks time, to be very clear about this question. Right now, things are hazy.
So how are we seeing, or are we seeing energy trade becoming a bargaining chip in the broader India-US negotiations?
Yes. So it's not formally a part of the India-US trade deal, but in overall scenario between any deal between US and India, it is an integral part. Mr. Trump made it abundantly clear that if India continues buying Russian oil, he will reimpose the penalty of 25%. He indeed imposed a penalty of 25% on India, and he removed it when he says that he's convinced that India will stop buying Russian oil. Though Indian side, there is no comment that India has stopped buying Russian oil or India will continue buying. There is no word from Indian side.
Mr. Srivastav, a final word from you. How sustainable is India's current balancing act between Washington and Moscow?
Moscow has been long-term ally. They always been standing with India. Indian, not only at the political level, at the public-to-public level, we love Russia. Russia has been our great friend. America, because of Mr. Trump's mercurial personality, I think we are listening to them like even the bigger powers are listening to Mr. Trump to save our trade. Like, for example, you must have seen one-sided trade deal between US and European Union, Europe and Japan, US and Japan, US and South Korea, Malaysia, Indonesia, even Bangladesh. Everyone had one-sided deal with US. And so India, Russia, long-term friends, they will continue to remain friends. Oil question is a difficult question. And because of US pressure, I don't know whether Indian government had taken a call, because nothing is in the public record. And one thing is clear, that India is never going to sacrifice India-Russia friendship on different aspects. It will continue. These may be short-term glitches that both the countries can sort out.
Mr. Arjun Srivastava, thank you very much for speaking with RT India, sir.